For all things outdoors, listen to the father of two, the Jesus-loving TV show hosting hairy, true-blood American redneck, Ben Cole.
And listen to the outdoor filming, chef cooking, chocolate milk drinking, John Weissmuller. And we are
Rooted Podcast. Hello, everybody. Thanks again for joining Rooted Podcast. We have a very detailed episode coming up today. So on the last episode, we kind of crossed over into this a little bit. We just gave y'all just a teeny tiny sample portion of what really goes into this topic today, which is food plots, which is nutrition for your deer herd. So we're going to really deep dive into this, and I think you guys are going to love it. So Ben is way more educated into this subject than I am, so you're probably going to hear a lot of the talking from him today. But regardless, we're going to dive into it. So Ben, let's kind of talk about a couple things we already discussed, just to go over it one more time, and then we'll really deep dive. So let's go into a soil sample for a food plot. More specifically, we're kind of talking these summer plots that we're coming into. So simply put, Ben, what is a soil sample?
So a soil sample, it's pretty basic, is a test to see what nutrients are available in the soil for plants to use. And it gives you a number, and you can then go in and calculate your fertilizer needs, lime needs, things of that nature. So that way you can provide those plants with everything that they need to grow and yield the highest yields. And
Gotcha.
you may ask, well, how do you pull a soil sample? Well, there's 1,000 different ways you can do it. The scientific approach to doing it is doing it on a grid, right? So you zigzag across the field based on how big the field is. And so what you're doing is you're pulling samples all the way across the field, and there's different points all the way across. And that way you're covering all the different soil types in that particular field, because one area might need more nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium than another. So it's really good to have a good combination of all the soil in that field, a good representation of all of it, because then you can base that number on, what the field actually needs. When you get those results back, it's telling you the exact amount of what the field needs. And if you have a good mix of all of it, well, then you're better suited for accommodating the high regions and the low regions. It's just a much better way to do it. Now, there is another way to pull soil samples, and, depending on the size of the field, obviously. Like if you're in a food plot, you're not going to want to go and zigzag across a tiny little food plot, right? So what I would do is I'd start in the center, grab one there, and on the corners, just so that way, you have, and I don't mean like right up in the corner in the woods. I mean like, 15 feet, something like that off. So you're still in the plot itself. But just so you have a good coverage of the whole thing, that's kind of how I've always soil sampled, and it's worked out really great. And it'll really help you when it gets to the time to do your fertilizer and lime application.
Gotcha. So why do you think one should pull a soil sample if they are going to make a food plot? Like, is it just because it gives you all these numbers? Like, what does all that kind of tell somebody?
Well, so a soil sample, an analysis is what you're doing. So when you're pulling the sample, you're just grabbing samples of soil, right? And then you're putting it in a little baggie and writing what field it's from, yada, yada. And you ship it off to the lab. And what you're getting back is telling you, number one, pH. So your pH tells you how basic or acidic your soil is, right? And 7 is in the middle, and that's neutral. So for the maximum growth of majority of the plants out there, you're going to want a bare minimum of 5.5. I recommend 6.0. And, it needs to range from 5.5 to 6.5. But, like I said, it all depends on the crop. Some crops like 6.0 to 6.5. So you want to keep it in that range right there for the best growing abilities of that soil as far as pH goes. Now, another thing it's going to tell you is your NP and K requirements. Now, you may ask, well, what is NP and K? that would be nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And those are your three main nutrients to grow plants. It's the food for the plants to grow in the soil. Now, there's also some macro, micro elements and things like that in the soil, but for the basis of making sure that it has everything that you need. Because let's face it, we're not trying to grow a crop to harvest, right? We're trying to grow a crop to feed the deer adequately. So my main
Exactly.
focus is when I'm doing that is pH, NP, and K. Those are the ones you really need to focus on. So, that is the reason why you want to pull the soil sample so you can know going into it exactly what you need to give those plants every opportunity to grow successfully.
Okay. So far we've got pulling the sample,
Mm-hmm.
what it is, and what it tells you. Now, all right, let's say you have the information of the sample. You put whatever it is that is needed in the soil, right? Whether it's lime or you need some more nitrogen or whatever the case is, right? Now, let's say you spreaded that in the ground. Now, what are the next steps? Or is it finding out what you want to plant or need to plant? Is it how much? I mean, what are you doing now?
Well, one thing that I meant to note is when you pull your soil sample, you have this form that you fill out that says what crop you want to grow. So you can write in there like clover or corn or soybeans or whatever, and it'll be a recommendation for whatever you're trying to grow. Because obviously, corn needs a whole lot more nitrogen than soybeans do because soybeans are legumes, right? So they fix nitrogen to their soil or fix it to their roots and then it goes into the soil. So they can supply their own. So it's all based on the specific plant you're trying to grow, the specific crop you're trying to grow. Um, so with that being said,
Okay, gotcha.
that's really where we dive into that is you want to be specific, because each plant that or each seed that you're going to plant takes different requirements. So you don't want to pull a corn sample and then plant clover in there because it's going to be way off, way off. And same with
Mm,
soybeans and like
gotcha.
cowpeas and stuff like that. It's just not the same. So you have to break it down into individual categories, right? So, like for example, clover. You know, one thing about clover is that it's a legume too. And it has a lot of amazing properties, but as far as fertilizer recommendations go, you know, you're going to want to. I just totally messed up. All right, I'm going to cut it right here and start over. As far as clover goes, you're going to want to stick to the more, uh, 0 20 20 fertilizer, which is zero nitrogen because they don't need nitrogen. And that applies for soybeans as well because you do not necessarily need nitrogen, but you need the N or the P and the K for the actual plants to do what they need to do.
Okay, I got you. No, that totally makes sense. So it's really just understanding what you need for what you're planting, and to get that understanding, that's where the soil sample comes into play.
Exactly. That's it. 110%. There's a bunch of scientific stuff to go through, but that is exactly right what you just said.
So, okay, so we're talking about summer plots. Let's talk about, you just mentioned clover
Yeah.
and you mentioned soybeans, cowpeas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why would a deer hunter want to plant like clover, for example? I know for me, it's just for me personally, I know that deer really like it, and I know I've had success over a clover plot, and that's why I would plant it. Now, I want to hear your kind of more scientific and in depth reason other than I plant it and the deer eat it. Why do they eat it?
Okay, so one of the things to look at with clover, there's many. Okay, there's a lot of different aspects to clover that make it phenomenal. So first and foremost, it's very high in protein, right? And you know, it's very palatable. And what do I mean by palatable is when it's consumed, It's easy to eat. I guess it tastes good. I don't know. I've never tried clover, but it also has, and more red clover specific, but they all have these characteristics. But we're speaking, kind of in generalities right here. You've got calcium, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and a bunch of other minerals that go into these plants. So not only are you getting the protein that you need, but you're also getting all the other macro and micro nutrients that those deer need, aside from the mineral stations that you have out too. So they're getting a lot from clover. And like I said, it's super palatable. It's very digestible. And we'll get into the digestion rate and all that later. But as far as, what it does for the deer, it's phenomenal for total health because, and another tip, let me just back up real quick. Another thing is, and you've seen this, if you get your stand solid, you don't have to plant it for 5 years. You can just go in and bush hog it and call it good. That's one of those things. It's a perennial, so it can come back and come back. And that all depends on the variety too, right? Because you have perennial and annual clovers. So if you're wanting to have a clover plot that's there for the next 5 years, plant the perennial. Now, clover can be kind of difficult to get established, but once you get it established, oh man, that is a rock star of a food plot. And another thing is, aside from just deer, I mean, turkey love it too. Turkeys will absolutely hammer a clover plot. So, that's kind of what I would say on the clover side of things is that, high in protein, which obviously is what they need this all times of the year, right? So it's not just spring and summer, it's all the time. And that's the good thing about clover is it's there all the time. It's not seasonal really. And that's one of the good, that's why I rank clover number one is because it's not seasonal. So if you're, trying to establish something that's going to work for a long time and be constant year round, that's where you go to is your clover, because you don't have to plant it summer, fall, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's just there.
Well, and the other great thing about it is the browse pressure. It can take a lot. So, if you get a soybean field and you get 30 deer in there, they can wipe it out pretty darn quick. Whereas a clover field, not so much. I mean, you can mow a daggum clover field and it'll be back. I mean, everybody has clover in their yard probably. I mean, it's the same kind of idea. So the browse pressure is really high.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you bring up. A lot of these crops that you plant are not browse pressure tolerant, right? So let's talk about soybeans for a minute, and we're going to correlate these two. So soybeans, if you have like a quarter of an acre of soybeans and a quarter acre of clover, the soybeans are going to be gone in a week. The clover is going to be there for the next 5 years.
For years.
And it doesn't matter how much those deer eat it, it's still going to keep coming. It's just going to keep coming back. And, the thing about the soybeans is that they're just gone. Like there is no coming back. They're just gone. When they start nipping them leaves off, it's over. They don't come back from it. And, although it provides a lot of high protein and all that stuff, we'll get into that more in a minute, but it provides a lot of the same stuff that clover does, but it doesn't have the lifespan of clover. And it takes a larger acreage to plant to have the same effect as clover in a smaller area.
I got you. Well, let's dive into soybeans for just a second. You almost did. Let's just do it. So, I mean, soybeans, the biggest difference, right, is the protein, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, so
it has the highest protein, right?
Yep. So soybeans are going to have about 35% protein, which is very, very good. I mean, that's what you want in this time of the year, and here's why. You're wanting to provide the most protein possible because not only are you trying to grow, the bucks and all that stuff, which is what they need for muscular growth and things of that nature, but you're also trying to give those mamas enough um, muscle growth, milk production, and there's a lot of things in both clover and soybeans, but soybeans specifically, you know, they have a lot of the same stuff that the nutrients, but in a different form, like vitamin C, vitamin B6. So it's really different in what they offer because clover is not offering the B6, the iron, the vitamin C, things like that. So you're really diversifying a lot when you have more than just clover or more than just soybeans. You're getting a lot of both worlds that intermingle together to generate the best situation possible for those deer.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that definitely makes all the sense in the world. And I mean, what are you trying to to plant? So what I'm trying to ask is how big would you recommend planting soybeans to where it becomes reasonable to plant them? Because just like you said, if you plant a little plot, it gets eaten really fast, and then I mean the deer aren't really there eating them come season. So when does it become a big enough food plot of soybeans for it to be worth your while to hunt?
Well, I'm going to take a step back real quick because I forgot a very important fact about soybeans is that they are super high in fat. And fat storage is almost essential to make it through the winter and through the rut season or the breeding season, whatever you want to call it. You have to have the fat to make it through. In fact, I've seen deer die because they couldn't handle the cold and the pressure and the stress of the rut. Their bodies just absolutely couldn't handle it because they didn't have those fat storages built up that could handle the pressure and handle, you know, everything that was going against them. Because when they're out there running, chasing those does, they're burning every ounce. They're burning through stuff all the time. So if you go ahead and start building that fat storage now, then you already have a reserve built up. So that just helps. Even the does, man. I mean, the does are getting chased around all over the country, all over God's creation. Those does are getting hammered by these bucks. So not only is it important for your bucks, but it's also important for your does as well to have the uh, the fat storage built up, and the fat storage helps with milk production too. So that's one thing I
Right.
wanted to say about that, and uh, I think that's a very good point to note. So as far as like the field size, I've always gone by the rule of 5 acres because 5 acres gives you enough beans in the ground to actually survive. I mean, you're going to lose a lot really fast. And, but last year I planted 1 5 acre field to be exact of soybeans, and they couldn't quite eat all of it. They just couldn't quite get in there and eat all of it. So now they ate a lot of it. I mean, they hammered a lot of that field, but it gave the field enough time to grow and to get up
Right.
to a stage that was, sustainable during this browse pressure. Because they clip them off, I want to say it's below the cotyledonous leaves. I know cotyledonous is in cotton, but I think it's the same for soybeans. But if they clip them off right when they first come up, done, game over. Those are dead. But if if the plant has time to come on up and get some foliage on it, then it can be browsed. And it's there's so many plants going into that 5 acres that there's enough for them to eat to where they won't eat all of it unless you just have like an astronomical amount of whitetail. And even then, that's just kind of my rule is 5 acres as a minimum for soybean fields. So that way, like I said, you have enough for them to eat all summer long.
Now, let me ask you this because I've seen this roaming around on the internet for a hot minute. Is some people put like a almost like a fence around, maybe a couple posts and a couple strings or something, or electric or whatever it is. I don't know, but they essentially they kind of fence off their food plot, and more specifically stuff like cowpeas or soybeans. Have you ever done that? Do you know people that do that? Do you find that effective? Have you ever kind of dove in that world?
Yeah, so I mean, it can be very effective, but you also have to remember that a deer can jump an 8 foot fence like it's nothing. If they want in there bad enough, they're going to get in there, you know. But it does help. You know, they're going to go up and they'll either get shocked or realize, hey, there's something going on here that I don't need to mess with, you know, and they'll back off.
Mm-hmm.
And it does have its purpose. It really does. But I don't know that it's cost effective to do it on a 5 acre plot. I would say you may want to focus on that on your smaller plots, like your quarter acre, half
Right.
acre, something like that. I wouldn't dive into that on your bigger plots because it's just going to get
No.
costly, and a lot of time spent putting up the posts to go around 5 acres
Yeah,
is a lot.
but yeah, exactly. Yeah, but as far as just a little plot and trying to get it established,
yeah.
that may be a way to go potentially
Yeah.
for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it could absolutely help a lot. I mean, you know, if you can keep, I mean, like I said, you're not going to keep every deer out of there, but if you can keep the whole 10 of them from getting in there, then your plot has a lot better chance for success.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I've never really dove into that world or looked into it. I don't know. I've just never done it, but I'm sure you have definitely seen it in your day.
Oh yeah, we have tried it. We've tried a little bit of everything to make food plots work. You know, us old rednecks, we'll get out there and get a little wild with stuff like, well, you know, I thought of this idea I was reading on the internet, and you know, because I couldn't figure out, well, how am I going to get my dang soybeans to grow? And then I researched, and it said, well, you can just put hot sauce in your spray tank when you're applying your herbicide, and it'll stick to the leaves, and it'll be not tasty until the next rain. So, you know, if it's not going to rain for 2 or 3 weeks, well, guess what? Your plot's not going to get touched for 2 or 3 weeks. Now, I don't know if that really works. Never tried it, but I thought about it. Thought about it more than once. You know, I thought, man, how many packs of hot sauce do I need to make this work that it's not going to like taint what I'm trying to do with the herbicide here? You know, it's like, oh man, what does that look like?
It may just kill the plant.
I don't know. There ain't no telling. So I'd rather not kill all my soybeans. Dude. So.
Oh, exactly. Well, I know I kind of touched on it there. Cowpeas. I've been told it's very similar to a soybean. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, there is. So, your cowpeas are going to have more. So it's the same high protein as soybeans and clover. They're all three very high protein producers. The difference is that when the peas actually go into the pod stage and they actually develop the seed, that is excellent food source for not only deer but turkeys, quail, and a bunch of other birds of that nature. And another thing to note about the cowpeas is that it's full of vitamin B9, copper, vitamin B1, and you know, it's got manganese and iron too. So it's a lot like the soybeans, but the cool thing about cowpeas too is it has 11% dietary fiber, which is pretty nice, you know. So I'll get into the dietary fiber in a little bit, but it's a really good thing. It is a really good thing to have for those deer. So it's a little bit different, you know, but still pretty close to the same. That's why I choose these 3 for your spring and summer plots, is because they all three have a lot to offer for your deer. And it's good to diversify, you know. So if you're diversifying, let's say you have 3 or 4 food plots. Let's just say 3 for the sake of having 3 varieties here. So just put 1 in each food plot, and then you've got all your bases covered, and you're providing an astronomical amount of protein throughout your whole farm. Or you could just run with straight clover, you know, and then have your mineral sites too. I mean, that's one thing you got to think too, is your mineral sites are also providing a lot of these things too. So, you know, we're giving them every opportunity to grow to their full potential, does included. I'm not just talking about mature bucks. I'm talking about your does, your babies. They all need the total nutrition package.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about planting the food plots.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a certain time that we need to get clover in the ground versus soybeans versus cowpeas? Are they all kind of the same time frame? When do we need to be putting this stuff in the dirt?
Well, clover, is pretty resilient once you get it planted. A really good time to plant clover is when it frosts. You can frost seed it. So basically, what you're doing is when the ground frosts, it will. I don't even know how to explain it, but you broadcast your seed over top, and then when it thaws, it brings the seed into the soil. So that frozen soil will then open up, and your seed will be within the soil, which is what you want anyway. So that's a great way to do it. Another way is to use a grain drill. Now the seeding rate is going to be totally different, and soybeans you're generally wanting to get in the ground around the 1st of May, maybe the end of April, depending on the frost and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just a generality. You can plant, and that it also depends on your location. So, the southern states, you can plant, a little earlier sometimes than the northern states because up there you're constantly, worried about a freeze or something like that. But also up there, they have a whole different variety of bean that is suitable for those conditions. So, it really just depends on your region, when you're wanting to get them in the ground, and how soon, you can feasibly plant them without harming the plant due to freeze. And like I said, variety. Which variety are you planting? But typically speaking, in our region, May through the first part of June, May through June is kind of your window there. I would suggest May.
Right.
I mean, clover, I'm sure it has a specific plant date, but I mean, man, I just kind of plant clover whenever I feel like it. And it's always done pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not like,
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really had, oh, well, I got to go by this specific guideline for clover. I'm just like, well, let's grab some fertilize and go spread it out and call her good, I mean, we'll just call it good and just move on. So.
Well, yeah, and same here because to me, I usually just kind of plant my stuff in June,
Mm-hmm.
and it just tends to work out because I turkey hunt. Turkey hunting ends in May. Then I kind of give myself a week or so, and then we're kind of in the first part of June, and then I start my process of whatever it is, whether I need to mow or spray or till up the dirt or whatever. Then by the first week, 2 weeks max of June, I got everything planted and fertilized and all that fun jazz.
Oh yeah, and the weather has a huge factor in that too, right? So I've been trying to plant soybeans for the past 4 weeks, and we have had rain after rain after rain after rain after rain. There was one week that it was 5 days straight. There ain't no way you're getting in a plowed field with 5 days straight of rain. In fact, there was one specific time in that period where we got 10 inches of rain overnight. And let me just tell you something. That is where you get your tractor stuck to the axles, and you got to have a big boy to yank it out or a big tow truck to yank it out. And where I'm at down there, you know what it's like. There's no cell service, and it's a long walk back to the lodge. So I try to avoid
good luck
getting stuck at all costs. And plus, man, I don't want to destroy the ground and all that stuff, leaving big ruts. Well, then I got to go disc it again, and make it look right. So, weather really depends on your planting date. Really depends on weather. You can set a planting date all you want to, but if that ground is too dry, too moist, it's hard to. I mean, it's hard to turn a field. It's like asphalt. Me and you tried that. What was it? 2 years ago, we tried planting beans, and we were doing the no-till, and the planter wouldn't even go into the soil. It was just over. It just wasn't doing it. And that's when I learned, I already knew about, soil types and all that, but when I physically experienced soil that hard, I was like, holy smokes, man, I need to get in here and turn this ground. And, I knew that in the back of my head, but I was just rushing, trying to get some, stuff in the ground. And let me tell you something.
Yeah, exactly.
Rushing farming never works, ever. It's never going to pan out. You have to do the steps and do them in the right order. And if you're not doing that, then you're just wasting a whole heck of a lot of time. This stuff's going to break, or it's not going to
plain and simple there.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And and one thing I'm going to add to that real quick is, when we're talking about these small food plots, you don't have to have a 100 horsepower tractor to get in there and do this stuff. You can use a 30 horse, or you can use a hand tiller. I have done both. I mean, hand tillers work great. All you're trying to do is give those seed the best soil contact possible. That's the goal. It doesn't matter how you get there, whether it's a hand tiller or a tractor, does not matter. What matters is you're preparing the best possible seed bed. That's what matters. And either way is going to do it. It's just how much time are you going to put into it to get it to that point.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, what are you willing to do to get out of it? I mean, that's kind of just life in general. You get in whatever, or you get out whatever you put into it. So
yeah,
that's just the way life rolls. I mean, part of it. So I kind of want to switch gears here to fertilizer. We've kind of been talking about it. You kind of mentioned it with the clover and things, how it didn't need the nitrogen per se. So I just want to talk about kind of what is fertilizer and how would you use it on these three different plots that we're talking about for the summertime.
Okay, so fertilizer is simply plant food. Simply put, that's what it is. So the plants are consuming these nutrients in the soil to grow. And like I've noted before, it's N, P, and K, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Those are your majors, like your three main ones that you need to focus on. And now cowpeas are different. They're not like clover and soybeans. They don't produce their own nitrogen. So, your soybeans are, to get a yield of 30 bushels an acre, right? You're going to need about 25 pounds of phosphate and about 40-ish pounds of potash per acre. And that's going to get you around your 30 bushel an acre yield. Now, granted, if you're trying to do this commercially, obviously you want your yield to be as high as it can be, because you're trying to harvest it and bring in money for that, right? But you can also use the same method as clover, just leave off the nitrogen, run 20/20, and apply that at whatever rate the soil sample recommends to get what you need to get out of it. Because like I said, you're not trying to produce a huge 80 bushel an acre yield. You're not trying to do that. You're trying to produce tonnage, the leaves. That's what the deer are eating. Now, will they eat the beans once they're developed? Yes, they will, but it's not the same nutrition or nutritional value as the leaves themselves. It's a lot less. So the leaves are where all your nutrition comes from on the beans. Now, when you dive into cowpeas, now it depends on what fertilizer you're using. So if you're using triple 19, you're going to want to use about 200 pounds per acre. And if you're using triple 13, you're going to want to bump that up a little bit to about 250 pounds an acre because, give or take a little bit back and forth, but, they just require a lot different than
right,
clover and
soybeans and all that.
But it's all dependent on that soil sample, because you may not have to put out 200 pounds. You may not have to put out 250 pounds. You may only have to put out 100 pounds. That's the thing. That's the whole importance of the soil sample, is knowing exactly what you need, because there's no sense in going out and spending a whole lot of money on fertilizer that you don't need, because what you're going to do is, if you build it up too much, the plants can't handle it. So it has to be
burn it,
that,
right?
yeah, well, that's more with nitrogen stuff, but it's still more than they need, and it's too much. You want that perfect balance of exactly what it needs to perform the best. Because too much, too little, bad. Perfect balance, beautiful.
Right.
So, that's what I would suggest on that, is giving the plants everything they need. And that's why it's so important to pull the soil sample, so you know exactly what you're getting into. Because, I mean, let's face it, if you could save $150 on fertilizer, well, that's another tree stand. Or that's another Wise Eye trail camera, or whatever. You want to allocate that money to. I mean, diesel fuel, whatever. That's that. And two, you're not overdoing it. You want to have that good balance.
So to me, it just sounds like someone needs to go to like the local co-op, bring them the soil sample, and then just let those people, the professionals, tell you. Or they could go to school and figure out how to read it. But if they're like me, I just tell my buddy with an agronomy, degree or whatever it is, and then I just go, here, tell me what I need. I don't want to understand it.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that go into, the soil science and the agronomy side of things that it's just really helpful. I mean, the beautiful thing is I get to use my degree every single day. I didn't waste a bunch of time on something I don't ever get to use, which is huge, huge for me. And, I think too, as we go along, we're going to dive into some more varieties for the fall plots and stuff like that too. And, I just think that would be something that would be good in the future, because, those deer need that stuff in the fall too. So, we want to do the total 365 plan for your critters.
All right. So now that we've covered the fertilizer, we're going to talk about what comes after this. Why are we doing all of this work? And that's deer nutrition. We've been talking about it this whole time. Once you do all the work, now it's time for the deer's part of the bargain. What do they get to do? How does it help them? What goes into all of that? But we're going to make you wait one more week, and we're going to talk about that on next week's episode. So please look forward to that. Make sure you guys tune in. So this week we went over a soil sample, what it is, how to do it, what it tells you. We went over clover, soybeans, cowpeas. We went over fertilizer. And now, next week, we'll go over what it does for the deer. Ben, you got anything else, buddy?
Oh, man, just get ready. Hold on, because we're about to deep dive into the lives of a ruminant, which is the 4 chambers of one's stomach. I'll tell you more about that next week. In the meantime, though, don't forget, for all things Rooted Television and Rooted Podcasts, go to rootedtelevision.com. All of our episodes are there. We're on all main streaming platforms for this beautiful podcast that we have. And we have merch. Go shop. Go buy a hoodie. Go buy a hat, a t-shirt, whatever. And if you really want to support this show and keep us going with what we're doing, there is a link in our description that you can do so. With that, John, the redneck is out.
See y'all.
For all things Rooted Podcast and Rooted Television, and I mean hats, shirts, hoodies, and other merch, check out our friends at CH Lone Star Pro and the link that is in our description.